everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Mindful in Minutes podcast. And today we are going to talk about something that I am shocked we haven't done a Freeform episode on before, and that is overwhelm. At least I didn't when I did a little search through my color-coded spreadsheet for the word overwhelm. It didn't come up at all in a Freeform episode. So I'm sure I know it's something that we've talked about here and there, but we've never just done this is exactly what you can do when you're overwhelmed. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. So overwhelm is obviously something that hits all of us at any point, but I feel like right now in particular that this time of year can be extremely overwhelming. Not only is there just a lot happening in the world right now that's overwhelming, but this time of year with like the holidays, we have like a lot of fall birthdays in my family. There's just a lot going on at this particular time of year. Also, I feel like it's overwhelming, even though I feel like people started their Black Friday stuff like October 1st, but just like so many emails, and there's just a lot going on this time of year that can be incredibly overwhelming, not only in our environments, but also in our lives, tasks, things that we need to do or think we should do, all of that. And so this time of year, I think we all just get a little overwhelmed at times. Maybe not you. If you aren't overwhelmed or you've never experienced overwhelm, like, tell me about it in the comments. What tell me about your life, because I really want to know. But I thought that what we could explore today is I do want to talk a little bit about what's happening when we're overwhelmed. I think that we're not going to do a ton, not like a super duper deep dive onto like the science or what's happening in your brain when you're overwhelmed. We're just going to look at it high level. But I do think that it helps to understand what's happening in our brain when we're overwhelmed and why it can be so hard to get started on projects or to get things done or to get out of that overwhelm sort of loop. We'll talk about what overwhelm is. We'll talk about what overwhelm isn't. And then we're going to, just so we have that context, but then the bulk of the episode, I really just want to talk about exactly what you can do when you're overwhelmed and just get right to it. I am going to share what I do every single time, like the exact formula when I'm overwhelmed to help. And then I'm also going to share at the end if I had like one day in my calendar to maybe complete as many tasks or to work through the things that were overwhelming me in just one day, exactly how I would do it, like down to like I would wake up at this time and do this thing and this thing. So that's what we are going to do. I'm going to give you my overwhelm formula because it does happen to me. I get overwhelmed a lot of times just because I'm juggling so many things at once with being kind of, a mom and primary parent. I'm also a caregiver in my life, running this podcast, running my business, and then all just the regular, life stuff of like being an adult and, now the holidays and Pork Chop's birthday is coming up. He's such a little Scorpio. But anyways, I get overwhelmed with things. It happens to all of us. And so I feel like I kind of have not necessarily the cheat code, but I have a formula that really works for me. So I'll give you all the exact details on that. So what is overwhelm? Overwhelm happens basically when the demands that are placed on your system exceed your current capacity to meet them. There's one other term that I want to, it's like a therapy term, but it is a window of tolerance. And anyone who's in therapy or maybe just like, I don't know, on like a therapist on your algorithm, I'm sure you're familiar with this term. But basically, it's this idea we have this window of tolerance, this range of what we can tolerate within a day. Now, when we wake up in the morning, our window, it can be a big window, it can be a small window, it can be anywhere in between. Our window can change, throughout the day, right? If a couple of things happen, I think, did we talk about this maybe in the overstimulation episode? But if something happens to you, maybe a couple of annoying things right off the bat, maybe you wake up and for some reason this happens in our house a lot, but you wake up and you go to make your cup of coffee and at some point in the night, the fuse that is connected to the refrigerator and the coffee pot and the microwave is just like has blown out. And so then you have to go down into, kind of the creepy unfinished part of the basement try to flip the fuse. You understand what I'm saying. But maybe something like that happens when you wake up, or you wake up and your boss has emailed you and just says, we need to talk today or something like that, right? Or it could be a couple of little things. Maybe you just woke up to a few minor inconveniences. All of that can shrink your window. Or on the flip side, maybe you woke up, you had a great night of sleep, you're waking up, the sun is like pouring into your window and you have a nice slow morning. Maybe that makes your window a little bit bigger, and it can change throughout the day. So think about overwhelm as kind of our window of tolerance. So when we're overwhelmed, our window of tolerance is like tiny. We're almost in like shutdown mode. So overwhelm happens when the demands that are placed on your system exceed your current capacity to meet them. So when the current capacity is probably quite small anyways, because that window of tolerance is small. So the system can mean your brain or your nervous system or your emotional bandwidth or sensory tolerance, things like that, or even just your overall life. Overwhelm is a capacity issue. We do not have the capacity to meet all the demands that are currently being placed on us. So in psychology, they'll often define overwhelm as kind of this state of like emotional flooding. So when stressors, tasks, or emotions all pile up faster than you can process or regulate them. So your working memory, which is like the brain's short-term processing center, that becomes overloaded. And so attention fragments and decision-making breaks down. I would say a more like modern definition is that overwhelm is also a byproduct of overstimulation. If you haven't listened to the overstimulation episode, listen to that one. It's just a few ahead on the feed. And it's all about kind of this oversaturation of information coming in all at once that can't all be filtered. I think that overwhelm is kind of a combination of these different definitions because, yes, it could be a state of emotional flooding. It also could be there's so much overstimulation that you get overwhelmed. It could be that you just have so many tasks. It usually is a combination of the three. So I really like the definition of overwhelm. Just the demands that are being placed by our system exceeds your current capacity to meet them. So when we're overwhelmed, what's happening in our body and in our brain? So this is very much a nervous system and a brain thing. When you're overwhelmed, it's not just in your head. It's not just mental. It is like this whole body stress response. And I imagine every single person listening to this podcast right now has at least at some point in their life experienced overwhelm. Your nervous system is working overtime to protect you from what it perceives to be too much or too fast or too uncertain or too many like quote threats. And when your body is trying to protect you from all of this too much that's coming in, that's where then you really get into this state of what feels like that true overwhelm. So at the heart of all of it is really this network of different systems that are designed to keep you alive. And so they're essential to our survival, but they aren't necessarily there to keep you calm, which is where we get into some trouble. So of course, we're going to talk about our friend, the amygdala, which is she's always showing up. So the amygdala, right, it's a small almond-shaped structure that's like deep in your brain, and it's always scanning for threat or uncertainty, and it can detect when there's too much information or demand, and then it sets off kind of the alarm system. It activates your sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight, flight, or freeze response. So this might happen when maybe you get back from work and you open up your email and your inbox is like, has more emails than you can ever respond to. Or maybe you're juggling work and kids and a messy kitchen and other things at the same time. Maybe you're trying to make a really big decision while you're also just exhausted. Like you haven't been sleeping well and now you have to make this big life decision and you're just feeling like wrecked about it. Maybe you are, this is definitely not what I'm experiencing right now. But maybe you are in a state where you're planning a kid's birthday party, you're doing a lot of solo parenting, you're trying to run a podcast, managing holidays all at once while also trying to complete a full floor renovation because a pipe exploded in your house and so you don't have kitchen floors at the moment. And everyone's like, have you picked out new floors? And also, what about the dishwasher? And when can we come to do this? And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just I have a million other things to do, and now I don't have a floor. So maybe you're living life in that state like I am. So all of these things, your amygdala, it cannot distinguish between that like emotional overload and a physical threat. So to your brain, they feel the same, so it's going to react the same. And when you're overwhelmed, your body is saying, I cannot take in anymore right now. I need safety, I need simplicity, and I need to shut down. But the amygdala is just like screaming and continuing to put you in that fight or flight. So that's where you kind of get into that just like, oh my gosh, it's all like so much all at once. Then we have this thing called the HPA axis. So I think this is like a new brain region for us, which I love, but it's for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal. That's what the HPA axis, so hypothalamic pituitary adrenal. But basically, once the amygdala sounds the alarm, it then activates this HPA axis. And it basically is like this communication line between, you guessed it, the hypothalamus, the pituitary glands, and the adrenal glands. And so it basically then just triggers the release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which is going to increase your heart rate, your blood pressure. It's going to send blood flow to your muscles in case you need to act fast. It's going to suppress your digestion and immune system. It's going to flood your body with norepinephrine, which is going to sharpen your focus, but it's also going to give you kind of that jittery, like antsy feeling. It's certainly not going to let you sleep or sleep well. And basically, it shifts your body into survival mode. So the amygdala says, we have a problem here, ding, ding, ding. The HPA axis says, okay, I'm going to do my thing, release all these hormones. Let's go into survival mode. And while that's so helpful in a real emergency, my example is always you're going on a hike and you're hiking and a bear walks across the path in front of you. Absolutely. Like, give me all the stress hormones that I can possibly, give me the best chance I have to survive that bear. That is essential when you need to actually survive. But the problem is that if you are constantly in this state of fight or flight from overwhelm, from too much sensory information coming in, from too many demands being placed on you, from juggling too many things at once, from having a big project that you never know how you'll finish by the deadline. Any of those things, it can even be kind of this emotional overwhelm. You're trying to maybe keep it all together at work and also you're grieving a loss at the same time or a breakup or, usually I find overwhelm comes from a combination of all these different things, these different categories, right? And so that's usually where the true overwhelm comes in, is when you're juggling too many things in like too many different areas of life. So if you're in that for way too long, it's like you're trying to sprint an entire marathon. It is exhausting, and we're not meant to stay there for very long at all. We're actually meant to only kind of have that fight or flight response for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Because usually by then, if we go back to kind of our hunter and gatherer days, within those 2 minutes, either then the threat moved on, like the bear kept walking, or maybe that bear attack is over and we have, crossed on to the other side. But we're not really meant to stay in this like chronic fight or flight, which we do in this day and age for so many reasons. But that's really what then can cause that overwhelm. So then we have the prefrontal cortex, which is kind of that part of the brain that is right behind your forehead. This is what can make you kind of feel foggy or frozen when you're overwhelmed. I know for me, this happens a lot. I feel like I don't know what to even start on. I have so many projects. I have so many, I always think of them as open tabs. Like I'm looking at my laptop right now as I'm recording, and even my web browser, it has, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 tabs open. They're all things that I'm currently working on. They're just these open tabs that I can't quite close out because they all have things that are, that I'm still kind of working on. And so when you have way too many tabs open, the prefrontal cortex, which is usually responsible for helping you to kind of make some of these choices, kind of this thoughtful processing, it really isn't working well. So the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, perspective, logic, it really starts to kind of shut down under chronic stress. And your system redirects its energy away from that slow, thoughtful processing towards fast, instinctive reactions. So the amygdala, again, essential for our survival and that HPA axis. But those things, our bodies are always going to say, okay, well, I'm going to pick survival over anything else. So if that survival system is saying, wait a minute, be in survival mode, it's not going to say, okay, let's sit down and think logically about this and write a list and let's color code it and do this and that. And so that's why you can really feel kind of foggy or in that frozen state. And it's because the brain is going to be in that survival mode and it's not going to be using the prefrontal cortex as much as it should, kind of more of that part of the brain that's responsible for kind of that slow, logical, and also the emotion regulation piece too. So that's why when you're overwhelmed, you might feel like you forgot what you were just doing, right? You walk into a room, you're like, what did I come in this room for? Or sometimes, I'll start an email and I'll be like, who was I going to send a message to? Maybe you feel paralyzed by just like really simple choices. You might kind of snap at people or like cry unexpectedly. I will cry if I get too tired or very overwhelmed. I will cry. And you might feel like I don't know where to start. There are so many different things. I don't know what to do with this. I don't even know where to start. And it's not that your brain is broken. It's just it's prioritizing that survival over strategy. But when you're overwhelmed, you need that strategy. So in a little bit, when we talk about how do you get out of kind of that overwhelm cycle, the first step is going to be getting out of that survival mode. So then we have this thing called the salience network and the default mode network. This is kind of just like the spin cycle. So the salience network, this acts as a part of your brain. This acts like a spotlight. So it's constantly deciding what deserves your attention. Now, the salience network, especially now when we just have so much stimulation all the time, it's like working on overdrive and it's just a spotlight. It's like, okay, what am I going to, point this light out? What am I going to illuminate? What's going to get my attention? And when you're overwhelmed, this network becomes hyperactive. And honestly, it's probably already a little bit hyperactive just because there's so much stimulus coming in, our phones, so many devices, like we live in a very loud, stimulating world. But when you're in that overwhelmed state, it becomes very hyperactive. And it's always just scanning for what's most important or threatening. And so to me, I think about it as when I'm overwhelmed and I'm constantly like, okay, this thing and then this thing. And I'm like bouncing from thing to thing. And I'll put like 3 dishes in the dishwasher. And then I'm like, oh, I have to go do this thing. And then I'll like run off to, go do that thing. And then in the middle of that, I'll be like, oh, shoot, I didn't put the clothes from the washer to the dryer. And then I go downstairs and I'm putting the clothes from the washer to the dryer. And then I'm like, oh, I, told Pork Chop I was getting him a snack and I forgot about that. It's like you constantly have this light, this spotlight trying to decide what deserves your attention. But when it's hyperactive, it's just scanning like all the time, looking for important information, for threats. And you kind of can bounce from one thing to another. While at the same time, your default mode network, which is the part of the brain that really turns on when your mind wanders. So we've talked a little bit about this. I actually want to dive more into the default mode network in its own Freeform episode and basically like what happens when we let our minds wander. But this is the part of the brain that can often spiral into worry and rumination. So think of it as kind of like the mental noise of overwhelm. So if you're thinking about what if I forget something important? What if I disappoint someone? What if I can't keep up? What if more kids show up at the party that didn't RSVP? I don't have enough goodie bags and cupcakes, right? These things that are like these looping thoughts, and they'll start to amplify this sense of chaos. And it really kind of keeps the stress chemistry elevated. Your whole body is tense, and it keeps you sort of locked in that survival state, which we can't do a whole lot other than survive in that survival state. Or sometimes what happens often, if we're in it for too long, we'll just shut down. So that's what's going on in our brain. A lot happening in the brain when we're overwhelmed. It's not just, I actually learned a lot when I was doing research for this as to like what's happening in the brain, because what it feels like is happening in my brain when I'm overwhelmed is that it's just like either all of the parts of the brain are trying to do something all at once, or like none of it is doing anything. It either feels like it's way on overdrive or like offline, like dead. And so it's really interesting to kind of see the pathway that sort of the brain takes when you're in that overwhelmed state. So in your body, because your nervous system is integrated throughout your entire body, it's not just a brain thing, you don't just think about overwhelm, but you physically feel it. And think about this. Before I even talk about what some of the common, kind of physical indicators of overwhelm are, it might not be pleasant, but even for a second or like 5 seconds, physically tune into the last time that you felt overwhelmed. Like, what did your body feel like? For me, it's like kind of like breathing a lot, like a quick heart rate. It is like physical tension. I'm definitely a person who holds stress physically in the body. It's sometimes like almost a little bit like clumsiness kind of, because I feel like I'm just kind of like moving around, sort of like confused, like bumping into things. But some of the more common sort of physical cues that you're in a state of overwhelm is going to be like a tight jaw, clenched shoulders, shallow breathing, rapid heart rate, maybe feeling nauseous, sweaty palms. Sometimes people will say that they experience like time distortion. So maybe everything feels urgent or impossible, even if it's like a small thing or something that's really not urgent. Sometimes people will physically get like tunnel vision, like they'll see less. They might get irritable. They might cry for what feels like no reason, even though there is a reason. And then decision paralysis is a big one where you're just like, oh my gosh, I just can't decide. That was me. And like this like stupid dishwasher that I have to pick out. I don't know, because you have to like replace the dishwasher. And I'm just like, there's so many options. And I'm just feeling overwhelmed about everything in life. And now I'm like, and now there's no kitchen floors and we need a new dishwasher. And I'm just like, why are there so many dishwasher options? And it's kind of this like decision paralysis. So in those moments, your body is doing what it's designed to do. It is designed to respond to stress. But if we don't have the recovery time, if the state becomes really chronic, that's when you really get into overwhelm. And that's when you start feeling both like wired and tired at the same time, which that for some reason is just like one of my favorite phrases. I think because it's one I pull out a lot when I talk to people, when I work with them and they're talking about their sleep and how they're struggling to sleep or their mind is busy or like their body feels so tired, but they can't fall asleep. And I'll be like, oh, is it like you're wired and tired? And they're always like, yes, that's exactly it. So I just feel like it's such a good descriptor. So basically, if we were to look at all of that, I tried to take all of that and like overview it. So when we're overwhelmed, our brain's alarm system, the amygdala and the HPA axis, that floods the body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline and puts you into a state of fight or flight. It narrows your focus. It starts to speed up the heart rate, and it starts shutting down higher brain functions like planning and emotion regulation, which leaves us feeling tense, foggy, physically stuck in potentially panic and in survival mode. So that's what's happening when you're just in that complete overwhelmed state, or sometimes it goes the other way and you just shut down. Now, I want to invite you for a moment to reframe overwhelm. Reframe the whole idea of overwhelm. Overwhelm is not pleasant. It is not nice. No one likes to be there. But here's the thing about overwhelm. Overwhelm isn't any kind of like a failure or a flaw on your part or anything like that. It's information. It is like a capacity signal. It is your brain and your body saying there's more coming in than I can process right now. It's not that you're weak or that you can't get things done, right? This is important information that we need to listen to. It's saying you've hit your limit. It's asking your body, your brain, everything. It's saying fewer information in, or I need more support for what's coming in so I can find equilibrium again. It is a big indicator, so much information saying, hello, pay attention. We have a problem. Way too much coming in. I need to find equilibrium. So it might be this important information, but again, it's certainly not pleasant, but it can be so hard to sort of break out of that overwhelm cycle, which is exactly what I want to do to help you do that. So some of the reasons that we might get overwhelmed, if we're looking at kind of the more technical terms as to why we might get overwhelmed. Common one is going to be cognitive load limits. So this means that our working memory can hold only a few items at once. And there's basically there's either too much information coming in or there's too many of sort of these open tabs or open loops, like more than our working memory can handle. This can lead to complete overload. There's this thing called an allostatic load, which is just a really nice way to say that stress is piling up. That's it. It's like, did you have to give it a name like that? It's like you're stressed. So it's a stress pileup. It is maybe you're sleep deprived or you're sick or you're grieving or you have deadlines or you have, maybe your kid's having a hard time in school or you have even like a trip coming up. Maybe if it's a good thing, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. It's the holidays. Maybe you have family coming over and you're like, ooh, I don't know how that's going to go, right? Allostatic load is just a way of saying you have a lot of stress in your life. There's a lot of stressors happening around you. Things like overcommitment and perfectionism. So unrealistic timelines, a lot of people pleasing, unclear boundaries, really pushing yourself if you struggle with perfectionism, saying yes to too many things. All of this can easily lead to overwhelm. Uncertainty. Your brain, when things are uncertain and you're trying to like predict outcomes and looking for a little, magic crystal ball that's not there. It's not giving you any information. Uncertainty, your brain is spending so much extra energy either predicting outcomes, trying to think about outcomes, if this, then maybe that, or what if this happens or that happens. That can lead to overwhelm. And then there's also just certain things. It could be like neurobiology, hormones, things like that. So it could be maybe if you're at a certain part of your cycle, you're more likely to get overwhelmed. Of course, if you're neurodivergent, ADHD, if you are on the spectrum of any sort, if you have kind of a heightened sensory profile, things like that. There's certain things where some of us are just wired, again, with kind of this window of tolerance for overwhelm. Some of us naturally have bigger windows than others, or there's different times of the month where our window will be bigger than others, or different times of the year, whatever it is, right? So there also might be these different factors that can allow us to either get into a state of overwhelm easier or not so easy compared to others. And then also just like kind of this low grade or this continual digital stress. So endless notifications, multitasking, comparing ourselves to others on social media, information always coming in constantly, whether it be on Apple Watches, phones, computers, whatever it is. That kind of constant pull for our attention can easily lead to overwhelm. Now, overwhelm is not the same as overstimulation. So overstimulation, think about it as like just sensory input overload. So too much noise, too many visual stimulus, whether it be lights, clutter, colors, too much time on your screen, a tag on your shirt that's bothering you, certain textures, things like that. It's just overstimulation is just too much sensory input. Where overwhelm is the total like global mental, physical life load exceeds the capacity to deal with it. So tasks, emotions, decisions, all of that, plus the sensory input. So they feed into one another. So high sensory input kind of drains your attention. So then tasks feel bigger and harder. You might get this emotional spike, but then also on the flip side, reducing your overstimulation, so reducing that sensory input, can help to reduce overwhelm. And then as you reduce your overwhelm, that can help to kind of increase your window of tolerance for that sensory input. So they do play off of one another, like increased overstimulation leads to usually increased overwhelm. If we can work on one or the other, it usually helps to then kind of support in a reduction of both. Kind of an ideal situation would be reducing overstimulation and overwhelm at the same time. But definitely working on one or the other will help support sort of both of them. So that is just kind of all about what overwhelm is, how it happens, why it might happen, what's happening within us. Now, in this second part of the episode, I want to talk about what you're going to do when you're overwhelmed. So basically, we're just going to systematically reverse what our body is doing to try to survive and to get out of survival so that we can be strategic and get some things off of our plate and start moving more towards that equilibrium. And this is what I have used many, many times when I was overwhelmed. Because yes, I get overwhelmed. I juggle a lot of things. Also, I have used what I'm going to kind of walk you through if there's big things in life. So like before both of my maternity leaves, for example, with the kids, I had to batch a lot of podcast episodes. I had to schedule a bunch of emails. I had to, make sure that people that working on projects knew what to do. There's a lot anyone who's had to, whether it be any kind of a leave, there's a lot of work that you have to do up until that point, even if it's just vacation. So this is something that I really used the strategy like when I was preparing for maternity leave or even shorter term, like before I go on retreats and things, even sometimes preparing for retreats when there's like a really big project with a very like hard deadline, or just in seasons of life like I'm in right now where there's just a lot happening in different sort of categories in my life and I'm just kind of overwhelmed by all of the open tabs and all the different tasks. What I'm going to walk you through is exactly what I use every time. And for me, it really helps. So I hope that it helps you as well. But like I said, we're basically just going to systematically reverse what our body is doing to try to survive so that we get out of survival so that then we can move basically out of survival and into strategy. So we can get some of those things off of our plate and move towards equilibrium. And basically, you need to get out of fight or flight. You need to get out of that panic so then you can organize, strategize, then reflect. So if I had to break this down to like 4 things, it would be get out of survival mode, then organize, then strategize, then reflect. Those are like my 4 little steps. And I honestly had so much fun because this is something that I do all the time, but I've never sat down and been like, okay, if I had to break this into different steps. What would those steps be? And I honestly had so much fun, like breaking this down into like a step-by-step guide on how to beat overwhelm. So step 1, and I'm going to go through the steps, and then after that, I'll walk you through like if I could have a 1 day to reduce overwhelm, what that would look like. Step 1 is get out of fight or flight quickly. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick at least one. I think like 2 of these things would be ideal to get you off of that panic wheel, kind of, turn off that survival mode switch, right? If our nervous system is working like a light switch and it's on fight or flight, we want to switch it off and go into rest and digest. So we want to get out of that as soon as possible. First thing you're going to do, just silence your notifications across the board. That's not even one of the strategies. Let's make that like step 0.5 before you do anything else. Just any kind of that like stimulus that's coming in, if you can, if it's possible, just go on do not disturb, just turn off notifications. That's going to help. So to get out of fight or flight quickly, you're going to pick, I would say like 2 of these things would be good. Meditate. Sunday's meditation is one that is designed to kind of hit the pause button when you're in overwhelm. So Sunday's meditation will definitely help you with that. And I know that when you feel overwhelmed, you're thinking, I can't possibly stop right now for some silly thing like meditation. I have too much to do. I have so much that I have to do. I can't stop. I can't do that. It'll be a bad meditation, right? And you're already in that sort of overwhelmed state that you're just like, I couldn't possibly do that. Do it. There is no quote good or bad meditation. Of course, there's some that feel a little more productive than others, but I promise it's going to help. So this one I think is kind of sort of a non-negotiable. So I would maybe meditate and then pick one of these other things too, because it will really help. We know meditation is one of the fastest vehicles to get off of the fight or flight road, right? To take the off ramp from fight or flight. So definitely do that. Something that's going to be, like I said, Sunday's meditation is going to be really great for this, but anything that's going to be calming and soothing for you, if that's a body scan, if that's a breath meditation, if that's a visualization, something. So meditate absolutely is going to help because step number 1 is just get out of fight or flight. You're not going to be able to use the actual part of the brains that you need to use to get these things done if you're in that survival mode. So meditate. Then a few little optional things. I'd pick maybe one more from this list. Go for a walk outside, or go outside, get some fresh air. But I think going for a walk outside is ideal. Doing some relaxation breathing. This is where your exhale is longer than your inhale. Usually like an inhale for 4, exhale for 6 or 7 or 8. Relaxation breath. Turning off excess stimulus and any kind of sensory experiences. So turn off TVs, sounds, bright overhead lights if they're feeling like a lot. Maybe ideally you could swap it for like natural light. Maybe go sit by the window. If you're in uncomfortable clothes, change into comfortable clothes if you can. Maybe add a comfort item, so something that's really soothing to your senses, a weighted blanket, cozy socks that you put in the dryer for a few minutes. Maybe give yourself a little shoulder massage for comfort, something like that. So get rid of excess stimulus and sensory input, and then add kind of like a comfort item. There's also the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. This is like a really common kind of like therapy grounding, anxiety reducing technique. And it's like you name 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 things you feel, like 2 things you smell, and 1 thing you taste. I think you can kind of interchange them, but I think that's what they usually do. But like 5-4-3-2-1. And then also co-regulating, which is basically you get to like borrow someone else's calm, not in the irritating way where like you're panicking and you have someone being like, oh my gosh, just relax. That's not co-regulating. Think of co-regulation as like when you're feeling really stressed and then you go and you like cuddle your dog or your cat, and you just kind of like, you can like borrow some of their like calm energy or like their comfort, and it just makes you feel better. Or like a kid who is really upset about something and just comes over and like melts into their mom's arms and like cries for a little bit and then like feels a little bit better. Co-regulation is like that, where you basically get to kind of lean on someone for some comfort, but it's just like their kind of comforting, nurturing, loving energy helps to regulate your nervous system. So we actually don't have the capacity to fully self-regulate until the ages between 7 and 9, which I think is a lot older than what other people think, right? We think about a baby and they can't really regulate their own emotions, or like Poppy is 2 right now. So she's currently in this phase of just like losing her mind over snacks. She just wants to eat snacks like all day long, specifically chocolate chips. She calls them chocolate chippies. And there's a point to this, I promise. But I'm like, Poppy, you cannot just eat 10,000 chocolate chips all day long. And so when I tell her, no, you can't have more chocolate chippies, and she just like, just like melts to the ground. Like, it's almost like one of those, like, I don't know, like a sickly, like Victorian lady that's just like, and like, just like faints and like just, collapses over. That's like what Poppy does when I don't let her eat 9,000 chocolate chippies in a row and then like puke them up. God forbid, what a, horrible mother I am. But it's like that. So we think about like 2-year-olds, right? And how they will have these really big feelings, these really big emotions. And then maybe they need like a loved one, a hug from mom, or, take a deep breath, things like that, right? We're used to kids kind of co-regulating, but we don't really get the self-regulation skill to be able to do it on our own without a co-regulator until the ages of between 7 and 9. So anyways, I just think that's really interesting. But we still like co-regulation, even if we have the capacity and we're old enough to be able to self-regulate, that doesn't mean that we can't benefit from co-regulation from like a loved one or a pet. So that's step 1, get out of fight or flight. So meditate and then do something that feels really good and nourishing for you to get you out of that fight or flight. Doesn't have to be long, because again, in that overwhelm, especially if you have a deadline ticking, it could be, walk outside for 10 minutes, come inside, meditate for 10 minutes, throw some socks in the dryer, put them on your feet. And all of that takes 22 minutes total. But it's really going to help you have to get out of that fight or flight. Then I would say this is kind of an optional step 1.5, but I always find it to be so helpful. Clear off the space that you want to work at as just quickly, or pick up the room that you're working in. Clear off your desk. Maybe clean up the dining room table. I like to work at the dining room table often. Don't overthink it. Don't make this like a huge task. But for some reason, psychologically, reducing the visual clutter and just being like, okay, just a quick refresh of this area, a quick organization of this area. I'm talking like just a quick 10-minute power clean. That really, really helps when you're feeling overwhelmed, and to be like, okay, kind of get you in that mode of like, all right, now we are going to start tackling things. So we've gotten out of fight or flight. And even though I describe it as a light switch, it is sometimes a little bit more like a dimmer switch. So we just really need to turn the volume down on fight or flight. And then optional, but very quick refresh, just have like a clean surface that you're going to work on. It just, for some reason, at least for me, it really helps. All right. Then we get into this step 2. And step 2 in Kelly's Overwhelm plan is basically the sort of the organize. So this is where you're going to look at all of the open tabs that you have. It will not be cute. It will not be nice. You're going to think potentially that this might overwhelm you more. I promise you it's going to help. Because the problem is that there's just too many tabs open. That's why you're overwhelmed and you're constantly trying to look at all these different tabs, but you can't even figure out what's going on because there's too many. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to write down all the things that you have to do. I highly recommend get like a big piece of paper, not like your, cute aesthetic journal, because you know what? You're going to need bigger pages than that. You're going to have more that you need to write. If you're truly in that state of overwhelm, get the printer paper, get the full big like academic notebook, the big yellow lined ruled notebook, like get a big piece of paper because you're going to have a lot to write. And you're going to maybe set a timer for like 20 minutes and you're just going to do like a brain dump. Take time to do this. Again, I know you're overwhelmed. Taking, 22 minutes to get out of fight or flight and then take 20 minutes to write everything. So we're at like 45 minutes. I know that feels like a lot when you're overwhelmed. It's really going to pay off in the end. So set a timer for like 20 minutes. You can write down everything. I mean everything. Everything from the small, I need to put the dishes in the dishwasher, all the way to I need to plan holiday logistics. I need to plan my kid's birthday party. I need to, call insurance and get floors for my kitchen. Whatever it is, we all have our stuff. Everything from the smallest little task that you've been putting off that's going to actually take you 5 minutes to like the big thing that just feels like this big looming thing in life that you're like, I don't even know where to start. And everything in between, you can write it down. When I did this before like pork chops maternity leave, I think I had maybe like wrote down like 60 things that I had to do in like the 10 weeks before he was born. Okay, full disclosure, I just had to pause this recording for about an hour and a half because I just have to tell someone, and because you're here and you're recording, I'm going to tell you about it. The northern lights were just over my house in Minneapolis. What? I don't live like directly in the city, but very close where it would there's definitely usually too much light pollution. I'm going to put, let's see, when this is released, my story will still be up. I'm going to put pictures up on my IG stories so then you guys can see that why I had to pause this and then go running outside and lose my mind. And Pork Chop hadn't quite fallen asleep yet, so I got to grab him and show him. And what a special little, that was just such a special little delight. So I don't even remember where I was, but I had to tell someone about the exciting thing that just happened over my house. And you know what? It feels extra magical because, I mean, you guys know I'm obsessed with Iceland. And this is like, so to say, and I haven't been this year, but I haven't been this year. And I've really been sad about it. I've been telling Daniela all about it. The kids and I have been singing this like silly song about Iceland. I'm not going to sing it here live on mic. It is like very silly. But anyways, so all the manifesting Iceland came to me. And like we never get northern lights all the way down here, not like close to the city because there's too much light pollution. But anyways, special little thing. Okay, what was I talking about? Being overwhelmed. I had to pause my little talk on being overwhelmed and go have a magical moment. Okay, yes, we were on step 2. Okay. Step 2, so we brain dump everything, write everything down, set your timer for like 20 to 30 minutes. Anything and everything that you feel like has been an open tab in your mind that you've been thinking, I need to get this done or that needs to get done or I keep forgetting about this, like anything that you can write it down. And you might get it all down in 10 minutes and then just kind of sit there and look at your piece of paper, maybe listen to some music. And as you do that, then more will come to you, get it all there. So once you have this full brain dump on your big piece of paper, then you're going to do task triage and sort of organize and strategize. So you're going to look at this entire list. And if there is anything that you don't have to do, like you truly don't have to do, maybe it's just something that you think you, quote, should do, or it's just something that like you just really don't have to do, cross it off the list. That's it. Like, don't worry about it. A lot of it is going to be those, quote, shoulds. Like I keep walking into my bathroom and thinking, I really should organize the cupboard underneath the sink. Do I have to do that? No, nothing in my life is going to, other than I just open it and it's kind of cluttery and I'm like, I want to organize this. But when I'm in a state of overwhelm, everything feels like the biggest threat ever. And so the little cupboard under my sink is not that big of a deal. So I can take that and just, you know what, cross it off the list. It is not a priority right now. Or if you want to make a separate list, dual lists, you can put those things that feel like shoulds of things you would like to do if that's not going to stress you out more. But I just cross off the list. I'm like, this is not an actual to do. It's just a I would like or a should, crossing it off. So if there's any of those things you don't actually have to do, cross them off, get rid of them. They're off the list. You don't need to do it. Next, look at your list and see, is there anything that you could delegate to someone and delegate to them quickly, right? You don't have to spend a ton of time explaining how to do it. You could pass it off to a partner, a friend, maybe if you have older children. Like, for example, my mom is going to be over, actually the day that this episode is released, and she's going to help me make the little goodie bags for Pork Chop's birthday party. So I'll show her, I'll like demo and be like, okay, you put these things in, and then she's being so kind and helpful and is going to just, make however many we need of those. So like those kind of little tasks, or, your partner just say, hey, I know I usually do the dishes. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. Can you take care of the dishes today? Or whatever it is. Is there something that you can just easily just ask for help? And if it's really hard to delegate and ask someone for help, I also just, maybe reflect on that a little bit, right? Other simple things. I saw a little note of some examples of this, just dropping packages off at UPS or in the post office on the way to work, right? Something you can just kind of delegate. It's not too much of a lift for either person. But yeah, so if there's anything you can delegate quickly and easily, do that. And in the moment, you could just text them and then just delegate it and then cross it off your list. Then look at what's left, and then everything that's left on your list. And, there'll probably still be a lot on there. There's only probably maybe a couple of things, if you're lucky, you can delegate. And then there'll be a handful of things that you, quote, should be doing, but you don't really need to do and cross those off the list. You're still going to have a lot. You're now going to categorize. I like to color code. You could categorize maybe by little symbols next to the things, but you're going to put these tasks into 3 categories. You're going to categorize them into what I call 10-minute, 1 hour, 1 day tasks. So a 10-minute task, these are the little things. It's going to take you absolutely less than 10 minutes. Call and make that dentist appointment. You keep saying, I need to call the dentist to make an appointment. Ordering the paper plates for the birthday party, responding to the email with the question that will literally take you 3 minutes to respond to, but you just keep not responding to it. You're putting it off. Load the dishwasher, right? All of those things that are going to take you just a few minutes. But there's something about those little tasks, at least for me, that is just so hard. It never takes as long as I think it's going to take. And it just feels like it's just so hard to get it done. Just make the phone call or the appointment or whatever it is. It always feels like it's going to be just this huge thing, and it never is. So you're going to mark all the little, 5-minute tasks. And then a 1 hour task. So a 1 hour task is something that's, it might not take you exactly an hour, might be a little more, a little less, but it's one of those things that, might take you, it's certainly going to take you more than 10 minutes, but it's not going to take you a whole day, right? Drive to go pick up some groceries. Maybe you need an oil change. Maybe you have to go to the store and make some returns. It's, the 29th of the 30 days. You have to go get that done. For me, a 1 hour task might be writing a guided meditation, or it might be recording a podcast episode. Those types of things. Making those party goodie bags. Maybe you are on a particular workout plan or something. You need to get your workout in for the day. Those types of things that are going to take you an hour or maybe 2 tops, right? It's those types of things. So make a little, just make a little note of just make a little note of those 1 hour tasks. And then a 1 day task. This is anything that's really going to take up the majority of your day or potentially multiple days. So this might be like planning a vacation. And I mean planning a vacation from like beginning to end, to like booking the tickets, finding the hotels, planning the, all the little things, right? That's going to be one of those big tasks. It could be doing all of your holiday shopping. For me, that might be like right now I'm working on the New Year's Eve retreat for this year. That's a big project, right? It's writing all the content, it's filming it, it's editing the videos, it's uploading it, it's writing the description, it's, all those little things, right? And so that's going to be like a multi-day project. So just categorize 10-minute, 1 hour tasks, 1 day tasks. Then we're going on to step 4. Okay, so quick recap. Step number 1, we're getting out of fight or flight. Step number 2, we're getting all of the open tabs on one place in one big piece of paper. And then step number 3, we're categorizing them. We're getting rid of things we don't have to do. We're delegating anything we can delegate. And then we're categorizing in a 10-minute task, a 1-hour task, and a 1-day task. If you want to have a better name for that, like short, medium, long, I don't know, whatever you want to do, but categorize it into those 3 categories. Step number 4, strategize and implement. So then you're going to set your timer for, I put 75 minutes. I think that's a good amount of time. You could do 60. Set your timer for 1 hour, and you will do immediately as many as those 10-minute tasks as you possibly can. Just get them checked off the list and done. Seeing progress towards a goal and physically crossing a thing off the list actually helps to kind of restore those dopamine levels, give you a little dopamine spike, which is going to help you when you're overwhelmed. And you will be shocked at how many of these you can get done in like 60 to 75 minutes. We're not multitasking. That's not allowed. You have to complete one full task all the way to the end, then you cross it off, then you do the next one. And you can prioritize these 5-minute, 10-minute tasks of like what's most important. But also they usually, I feel like, are kind of equal in a point. They're just kind of those little things, right? And so a lot of times I just start at the top and I just get through as many as I possibly can. I just set a timer. I say for 1 hour, I'm going to do as many as I possibly can. And you're going to already, after that, feel so much better because it's always those like little lingering tasks, right? Every time. And it's always when I'm not by my phone. I happen obviously to be thinking a lot about the dentist appointment and the eye doctor appointment I need to schedule that I haven't gotten done, because I always think about it when I like drive by the eye doctor, but I'm, taking pork chop to school or whatever. So I'm sitting, when I sit there and I'm on my desk and I just start going through them, just make those things, get that done. After that 1 hour, you'll already feel better. I promise. Then go back to your list and choose 1 or 2 of those 1-hour tasks, if you have time, that you can realistically do that day. Pick these based of priority. If there's like a top priority, like I have this 1-hour task and it needs to be done by tomorrow morning, like for example, for me, a 1-hour task, I don't usually record podcast episodes so close to the release. Part of this was because I had to stop my, recording to go have a magical Northern Lights experience. But it is like Tuesday night at 9 p.m. And this podcast episode is to be released at midnight. And so this is definitely, if I were picking a 1-hour task and it was 9 p.m. and it had to be ready to roll at midnight, you better believe I'm picking that one first. If there isn't one that's necessarily time sensitive, just, I don't know, pick whichever one you want, but there's definitely going to be some that are time sensitive. So pick 1, maybe 2 if you have time, based on what is top priority that needs to be done like ASAP. So for me, again, that might be like completing this podcast episode. And then my next one might be, I don't know, that stupid dishwasher that just keeps, I'm probably going to set a timer for 1 hour for me literally and be like, this is the only time I'm allowing you to sit there and keep looking and comparing these same dishwashers back and forth. It needs to get done so that then we can get the floor in, but whatever. And then you do that. Then with your remaining time, I think this is really helpful. If you have any remaining time after you've done 1 hour of just busting out as many 10-minute tasks as you can, then you are going to do a 1-hour task, maybe 2 1-hour tasks. If you have time remaining, I think this is so helpful. Look at your 1-day tasks. Again, give yourself another timer. It could be 15 minutes. I think 30 is probably good. It depends how many tasks you have. And take those 15, 20, 30 minutes to break the 1-day tasks into smaller 1 hour and 5-minute tasks. Rarely is a 1-day task actually just one big, long 1-day task, right? It's other things. When I think about if I really wanted to complete the New Year's Eve retreat in 1 day, I could probably do it if I just like hunkered down and did like 12 or 13 or 14 straight hours. I probably could, but they would be a lot of 1 hour and 5-minute tasks. It would be writing this section. It would be, recording this class, editing that class, updating that class, like uploading it to, the streaming software that I use, writing the description of that video, making the playlist that goes with it. All of those things are separate tasks that go under the big one-day task. So if time remains, take the one-day tasks, set a little timer. You don't have to spend too long on it, but break it up into the smaller tasks. So then if you pick up again the next day and you're kind of chipping away at this overwhelm, you can look and do the same, 5-minute tasks or 10-minute tasks, and then set a timer for an hour and do as many of the little short tasks as you can, and then go based on priority into the bigger tasks. Then step 5 is going to be rest, reward, reflect. So even if you just did these things, and I know what I just walked you through, you're like, that is a lot, that is overwhelming me. Here's the thing. 1, I hear you. I get it. This is my personal process that really, really works well for me. But if you're already overwhelmed, I would rather be overwhelmed, like moving through it, than just stuck as to like, what do I do next? You're going to feel overwhelmed potentially for, I don't know, another hour tops. Not even, because you're going to start feeling better immediately once you start getting out of that fight or flight. So once you start this process, you're immediately going to start feeling better, even if it's just not feeling that like panic of being so overwhelmed. And then as you just start moving through some of those tasks, especially those little ones, and you just start taking them off and you see that list shrinking, you are going to start feeling better. It just sounds overwhelming now as I'm describing it. When you're in it and you're doing it, it feels busy. It doesn't feel as overwhelming. So you just did a lot of things. Even if you just did the get out of fight or flight activities and the brain dump and categorize them, even if you just did that, which I'll talk about next if I had one day, like a full 10 hours to get through as much as I possibly could in a day to reduce my overwhelm. If I was really at a state of like, I just have too much going on, I need to just get so many tasks done. I'll talk through like how I would do that. In an ideal world, I would have already done, maybe the night before, done some of these get out of fight or flight practices so that I can sleep better the night before, and done my brain dump and categorized already. Even if you just do that, that can be really helpful. And then the next day you can start chipping away. If you can do the categorizing and set your timer for 1 hour and tackle some of those small projects, you'll feel better. Absolutely you will. So then whatever you've done when you're working on your overwhelm first, then you're going to do step 5, which is the last one, which is rest, reward, reflect. So you just did so much. If you had like 50 things on your list, you probably accomplished like at least 10 of them, probably more, which is amazing. Reward yourself with something relaxing, even if it's short and sweet. Take an everything shower. Go to a yoga class if you want, even if it's like 10, 15 minutes of a YouTube class. DoorDash your favorite comfort food for dinner. Go for a little walk with your dog. Reset. Something that is good and nourishing and feels nice and like a little reward and a treat. That also helps to continue to get you out of that fight or flight. So let something that is restful, nourishing, let that be your reward, and then you'll feel even better. After you've done all of that, now you reflect. You write down a list of all that you did today if that feels good to you, even if it's just themes. You can look at everything that you did and be like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. Again, that helps to kind of increase that dopamine, helps you to get out of sort of that cycle. Then when you have time, journal. And all this stuff too, it could be broken up over a series of like days if you want. This is just my formula. You can journal. So this could be just thinking about it. It could be writing it down. It could be my new personal favorite, which is just doing a voice note in my phone that you can keep, or often it's like I just talk it through, like when I have these open prompts, and then I'll just delete it. And so some questions that you could ask yourself when you're reflecting could be, what areas of my life seem to be causing me the most stress? Write about it, think about it, talk it out in a voice note. Am I setting unrealistic goals or expectations for myself? So the whole point of this whole reflection is then to look for different patterns or different clues as to what's getting you to that state of overwhelm. Now, we can't always do something about it. However, there are some little things that you can do. So for example, when I was doing some of this reflection after a different round of overwhelm, something that I started implementing, which is so simple but is really helping me, is I used to get really overwhelmed with the laundry. It's just one of those tasks I have a hard time getting done. And I'll wash it and dry it, but then it just like all these clean clothes then are piling up. And so getting it folded and put away is really hard. So now what I do almost every day is I just do one load of laundry. I mean, we have 4 people in this household. We seem to be able to create a load of laundry basically every day or every other day. And so I just every day do just one simple load of laundry. Just I wash it, and then I dry it, and then I fold it. And then I never get that backlogged feeling. And then once I get backlogged on something, it's really hard for me to feel like I can get caught up. That's when I get overwhelmed. So it was through some of this reflection that I started doing a couple of just these little maintenance tasks, if you will, that helped reduce my overwhelm. Another question could be, what is the primary emotion that I feel throughout the day? And why do I feel this way? I think that's just a really good one to ask in general, but really helpful when you're overwhelmed. What is one basic need that I have been neglecting, and how can I prioritize it today? Neglecting our basic needs is always going to make our window of tolerance smaller. That could be sleep, that could be eating nourishing foods, moving our bodies, connecting to people, things like that. And then the last one, if I could wave my magic wand and take away one area that is causing me stress and overwhelm, what would that be? And I think just answering these questions, again, journaling, thinking about it, talking it out in a voice note can be so helpful. And you can do all this in a couple of hours, like in an evening. If you really want to carve out, a little evening and do this, you could do it in a few hours and you'll feel better by bedtime, definitely. And you'll have more clarity. You'll have more direction as to where I'm going, which helps so much when you're overwhelmed. You also could carve out one day if you're feeling really, really overwhelmed, or you have one really big project that you're overwhelmed by, you're not sure how to get it done, or something you need to get done quickly by the deadline, all of that, you could do that. So if I had one day, this is the last thing we'll talk about, I had a lot of fun imagining this ideal day. I actually really want to do it. I've done this in absolutely like chunks before, but laying it all out was really fun. So if I had one day to get out of overwhelm, or reduce the overwhelm as much as I possibly could, specifically like task and like open tab overwhelm, this is exactly what I would do. 100%. And this could be anything, right? This could be me working on the New Year's Eve retreat. This could be, families coming over for the holidays and everyone's coming over tomorrow and you're not ready. It could be that you're just in a state of like, there's too much going on. I need to just get some things done and close as many tabs as possible so I could just feel like I can breathe again and just feel better, whatever it is. If I had one day, this is exactly what I would do. First thing, the night before, this day. Before my get it done day, I would prioritize my sleep the night before. So maybe I would, take magnesium before bed, which I love. Take a Dreamy. You've heard me talk about it before. It's a Mary and Jane product. It's like magnesium, tart cherry juice, and then it's like microdose THC. Anyways, anyone that I've shared it with, very big fans of Dreamies. Maybe something like that. I would, meditate before bed, go to bed at a reasonable time. And the big thing is I would remind myself, now is the time for sleep. Tomorrow will be the time for doing. Reminding myself this helps to reduce when I wake up with like a really busy brain. Just remind myself, now is the time for sleep and I have dedicated time tomorrow for doing. Then I would set my alarm for a reasonable time for me to start the day. You're going to choose what time that would be so you can adjust all these start times accordingly. For me, like my ideal wake up time would be like 6:45 a.m. For me, that would be like a really nice like sleeping in, but also still and believe me, I am not some virtuous person who gets up at 4 a.m. because I'm like going to go conquer the world and then I meditate for 2 hours and journal and work out and all that. I'm waking up at 4 a.m. because my kids are waking me up at 4 a.m. So for me, like to sleep till 6:45 a.m. would be like great because I am a morning person. I get a lot of work done in the morning. That would also be like sleeping in a little bit. So I'd get a good amount of sleep, but also get an early start on the day. If you're a night owl, maybe your 6:45 a.m. is like a 10 a.m. That's fine. Adjust all these things accordingly. So for me, I'd wake up at like 6:45 a.m. I would make sure that for the day, as best I could, these are just some ground rules I would set for myself. I would turn off distractions. I would commit myself, even the night before, to just one big day to feel better. It's like when you're moving and you're like, okay, tomorrow's moving day. It might suck. It might be a lot of work. I'm going to be tired by the end of the day, but I'm going to move all of these boxes and I will get them from point A to point B. even if you have that mindset, that is totally okay. Tomorrow, it's going to be a big day. It's going to be a long day. I'm going to get through it. I'm going to feel better when it is done at the end. So I would turn off distractions. I would commit myself to one big day so I feel loads better by the end of it. Ideally, I'd be taking the day off of work, no meetings, no other commitments, nothing. Clear calendar for this day. And I would commit 8 to 10 hours for this day. That would be my ideal. You'll hear in a moment, you're not going to be doing just straight tasks for 8 to 10 hours. But for me, I would probably commit myself to like 7 a.m. to like 4 p.m. I tend to really hit a slump between 3 and 4 p.m. There's this like theory out there about like different archetypes. I don't know. There's one like the bear and all these different things about how you work best and your kind of productivity flow. And for me, I'm the one where it's like you start with your most productivity and energy at the beginning of the day, and then it depletes throughout the day. Some people are the opposite. They start really slow and then they gain momentum throughout the day. So I think just learning how you work best. But for me, like a 7 a.m. to like a 4 p.m. would like be like a big full day. And by 4 p.m. I'd be totally like spent. And then my ground rules would be do not disturb on as much as possible. No podcasts or music with words in it while I'm working, instrumentals only. I find that really pulls my attention. No flows longer than 2 hours max. No skipping meals. And then have a little rest reward at the end of the day and already have decided on that. So yoga class, DoorDash a comfort meal, and watch a show, whatever it is. All right, here we go. So alarm is set. I wake up at 6:45 a.m. There are 3 things that are happening before I even truly tackle that to-do list. 30 minutes of movement, anything, walking, yoga, HIIT, YouTube Pilates, whatever it is. Ideally, I like to do this at home because I'm adding a lot of time when I drive to and from places. In no particular order, 30 minutes of movement. I'm going to have a cup of coffee and a healthy breakfast with protein-rich foods, and I'm going to meditate for at least 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. This prepares my body and my mind and everything to have a great and productive day. There's also a lot of studies around, of course, meditation, great for getting out of fight or flight and mental clarity, moving the body, helps with productivity. All of these things prepping me for a great, what I'll call like morning chunk of work. Maybe I'll put in a quick shower too. I might also save that for like a break in like an hour or two. Then after that, after those 3 things, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start work. I am going to, if there is anything for the day that I have a set time, maybe I have to, pick someone up for the airport, or I do have a meeting, or I'm going to a certain workout class or something, I will schedule that in and make sure that I'm working around that. But ideally, I don't have those. Then it's brain dump time. So if I didn't do this the night before, I'm pretend like I didn't, because this is if I only had one day to do all this, what would I do? So all of that, and I'm doing the quick mental math, right? So all of that, the quick workout, moving my body, breakfast, easy breakfast, protein-rich meditation, all that's going to take like an hour, right? So it's still 7:45. Maybe if I took the shower, we're starting like 8 a.m. on the dot. Sitting down to work, it's brain dump time. So remember, I'm going to take like 3 big deep breaths. I'm going to talk about everything that I talked about in the brain dump session, write it all down, everything, set the timer, and then I'm going to triage them into 10-minute, 1 hour, 1 day tasks. If you've already done this before and you're completing a 1 day task and you've already broken that up, or maybe you use this time to break up your 1 day task into smaller tasks, you could do that too. But anyway, so I have those tasks. And then I'm going to start right away on my 1 hour with as many 10-minute tasks as I possibly can do. So if they're all truly 10-minute tasks, I'll get at least 6 of them done. But usually they're like 2 to 5 minute tasks. I will not allow myself to multitask. I cannot move on to another task until I've 100% completed the one before it. So I set my timer 1 hour, as many of those small tasks I possibly can do. Then when the timer goes off, I'm going to go into a 1 hour task. I'm going to start with the least desirable one. Especially for me, I lose steam throughout the day. So if I've already kind of triaged in those different things, and for this big day, I would pick 3 1 hour tasks that you want to accomplish. And I would prioritize them based on, necessity of what needs to be done. And then I would put them in order of like least desirable, and I'm going to end with either the most desirable or easiest one at the end of the day. So I'm going to complete my 1 hour task that is the least desirable one to me. Even after these 2 things, your 1 hour of 10-minute task and completing a 1 hour task that is your least desirable one of the day, you're already going to feel like $1 million, I promise. Then I'm going to do a little bit of a working break. I'm going to complete some what I call like doing tasks. So things that don't necessarily require my brain, and it kind of moves my body at the same time. folding laundry, walking the dog, cleaning out your car. I don't know. For me, sometimes I'll let those, packages kind of stack up at the front of the door, undoing packages, putting things away, that kind of stuff. For like 30 minutes, I'm going to do a doing task. So then I can switch my brain off. This is where maybe, listen to music with words, listen to a podcast, a little bit of an audiobook, right? You're just kind of doing things. So you're still checking things off the list, but you're working in a different way. Then after that, I'm going to come back and I'm going to complete my second 1 hour task. This is the one that isn't necessarily the hardest, but maybe not the easiest. Then after I've completed that one, then I'm going to take my lunch break. We're taking like a solid, minimum of 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just a good, solid lunch break. Do whatever you want. If you want to watch a little TV while you're eating. I know they say don't watch TV while you're eating. Whatever. I don't care about that. At least not today. Take that lunch break. Then you're going to go back into, after that, because you just had that reset, we're basically going to repeat. You're going to go back into another hour of 5-minute tasks. And you're going to get as many done as possible. Maybe you got them all done in the first block. Great. Then just go right into your last 1 hour task that is like your least desirable. But I'm assuming if you're really overwhelmed, you probably still have another block of those little short tasks that you can complete. Then you'll do your final, your most desirable, your easiest 1 hour task. You'll check that off the list. Then you're going to take a movement break or a breath break or a meditation break. I kind of like both. I like to move a little bit, and then I like to either meditate or breathe a little bit. And again, this can be a 20-minute walk and, 5 minutes of breathing or something. You're going to switch gears. You're going to turn off the brain a little bit, just move the body, do a little breathing, a little meditation. Then, if you want, you're going to come back and you're going to complete another task. It could be another 1 hour task, something else. But after that break, you'll have a little left in the tank. You're going to complete something. Another 1 hour task if you have time. And then you're going to end with as many little final projects as possible. So you can kind of look at the clock, and if you say, okay, I committed to 4 p.m. and it's 3:15, the last 45 minutes that I have, I'm going to finish off any little final projects that I have as possible. Then in the last kind of 15 minutes of your day or your time that you committed to work on this, you're going to end with reorganization of your list so that then the next day when you pick up, you have a fresh one with only remaining tasks. It'll be cleaner. It'll be so much smaller. You will feel so much better, and you'll have complete clarity going into the next day. And even if you take one of these big kind of power, I actually think I'm going to do this on Thursday because I have a co-working day, something kind of similar to this. But then I will end with organizing and preparing for then the next day. So even if the next day I'm going to commit 1 hour or 2 hours to my working on my overwhelm tasks, I already have the clarity. I don't have to brain dump again. I don't have to triage again. I don't have to organize again. I can just sit down and look and say, okay, I have 1 hour. What's the next top priority 1 hour task? It's this one. Boom, I'm going into it. Taking those last, I know you'll be tired, but taking those last 15, 20 minutes to reorganize the list and basically write a new one for the next day is going to help you immensely. Your future self will be so grateful that you did that. And then if you want, at the end of the day, if you want to do another doing project, maybe you still have a little gas in the tank, you could do that. Something that takes your body and not your brain. So again, the ones off the top of my head is like folding laundry, swapping the kids' clothing size out, picking up the entryway because we're still working on with the kids. Step 1, come in the house, shoes go in the basket. Whatever it is, right? Those kind of tasks that you just have to do with your body, but it doesn't require necessarily a lot of brain work. You could end the day with one of those and then you're done. That's it. Do not completely overextend yourself. So you're like, you will be so tired by the end of this day. Give yourself your rest reward. So for me, that would be wrapping up around 4 o'clock, maybe 4:30 tops. And then I would love my rest reward to go be like a little yoga class. And then I'll come home and have some dinner, a little wind down time, maybe watch a little bit of TV and go to bed early. That is exactly what I would do if I had one day to get as much done as possible and to take my overwhelm meter and to dial it down as much as possible. That's it. So hopefully I had so much fun creating this. I hope this sounds helpful to even one of you. I know it sounds like a lot. I promise it helps so much. I have done this time and time again, and it helps. So I'm trying to think. Quick recap. You're overwhelmed. Step 1, get out of fight or flight. Do a meditation, move your body, do something comforting for your senses. Step 2, brain dump. Put all of those empty tabs on a big piece of paper. Step 3, categorize them into 10-minute task, 1-hour task, 1-day task. Step 4, strategize and just start doing. If you just do all of that and then do 1 hour of those little tasks, even that, you'll feel better. And you can, rinse and repeat that as many times as you need to until you feel like you're finally breathing again and you're not so overwhelmed. So I hope that helps. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here now that you know it is late into the night. And I am going to now get this ready and you'll be hearing it in just a few hours. And I hope you have a